Have you ever wondered whether God hears a prayer differently, depending on how you position your body? Maybe you kneel beside your bed. Maybe you stand with your hands lifted. Maybe you sit quietly in a chair. Or perhaps, especially at night, you simply lie in bed and pray because you are exhausted. But here is the strange thing. When you read the Bible, people pray in almost every position imaginable. They kneel, they stand, they bow, they fall face down. They lift their hands. And in one remarkable passage, David remembers God while lying on his bed at night. So which posture is the most powerful? Let's look carefully at what Scripture actually says. And stay until the end, because the answer may change the way you think about your own prayers. If someone asked you to picture a serious prayer in the Bible, chances are you would imagine someone kneeling. And there is a good reason for that. Kneeling appears repeatedly in Scripture. When Solomon finished dedicating the temple, 1 Kings 8:54 says that he had been kneeling before the altar of the Lord with his hands spread toward heaven. Daniel did something similar. Daniel 6:10 tells us that when Daniel learned that prayer to anyone other than the king had been prohibited, he went to his house, opened his windows toward Jerusalem, and knelt down on his knees 3 times a day, praying and giving thanks to God. That is a powerful image. But then we encounter something even more dramatic. In the Bible, there are moments when people don't simply kneel. They fall to the ground. In Matthew 26:39, Jesus goes to Gethsemane and falls with his face to the ground as he prays, "Not as I will, but as you will." That is not casual prayer. It is surrender. Jesus is facing the cross, and his physical position reflects the seriousness of the moment. And throughout the Old Testament, falling face down appears in moments of worship, fear, humility, and encounter with God. Numbers 16:22 describes Moses and Aaron falling on their faces before God. Joshua 5:14 describes Joshua falling face down before the commander of the Lord's army. So perhaps this is the ultimate prayer posture. The lower you go, the more humble you become. But there is a problem. The Bible doesn't say that, because Scripture gives us examples of powerful prayers in many different positions. Consider standing. Standing doesn't sound as humble as kneeling. Yet Scripture contains important examples of people praying while standing. In Mark 11:25, Jesus says, "And whenever you stand praying," notice that Jesus doesn't say, "whenever you kneel praying." He specifically uses the language of standing. In Luke 18, Jesus tells a parable involving 2 men who go to the temple to pray. One of them is a Pharisee, the other is a tax collector. The Pharisee stands and prays. The tax collector stands at a distance, won't even lift his eyes toward heaven, and says, "God, be merciful to me, a sinner." And Jesus says the tax collector went home justified. Think about that. One man has a posture that looks religious, the other barely looks upward. Yet Jesus focuses on the condition of the heart. This brings us back to the question that started this investigation. Can you actually pray while lying in bed? The answer appears to be yes. But let's let Scripture speak for itself. Psalm 63:6 says, "When I remember you upon my bed, and meditate on you in the watches of the night." David is lying on his bed, and during the night his thoughts turn toward God. This is a very different picture from Daniel kneeling by his window. Psalm 4:4 also says, "Ponder in your own hearts on your beds, and be silent." The bed becomes a place of reflection, a place where the noise stops, a place where the heart speaks. And perhaps this is one of the most relatable prayer scenes in the entire Bible. Because many of us know what happens when the lights go out. During the day, we are busy, we work, we solve problems, we take care of other people. But at night, when we finally lie down, our thoughts become louder. We remember what happened. We think about tomorrow. We worry. We replay conversations. And sometimes in that quiet moment, we begin to pray. The Bible does not present that as an inherently inferior form of prayer. So which one is the most powerful? Here is the answer. The Bible never identifies one physical posture as universally more powerful than all the others. And that may be the most important discovery in this entire question. The power of biblical prayer isn't presented as coming from the position of the body, it comes from the posture of the heart. Consider Daniel. His knees were bent, but more importantly, his loyalty to God was unbent. Consider Jesus. He fell face down, but the central words of his prayer were, "Not my will, but yours." Consider the tax collector. He didn't perform an impressive religious posture. He simply cried, "God, be merciful to me, a sinner." And Jesus said he went home justified. That tells us something profound. You can kneel with a proud heart, and you can lie in bed with a completely surrendered heart. The external position doesn't automatically determine the spiritual condition. If you were expecting one specific answer, kneeling, standing, or lying down, the Bible gives us something more interesting. There is no single physical posture that Scripture declares to be the most powerful. Instead, the most powerful posture is the one that genuinely expresses humility, faith, surrender, and dependence on God. So tonight, wherever you are, don't wait for the perfect posture. Pray. If this changed the way you think about prayer, tell me in the comments. What prayer posture do you normally use? Kneeling, standing, sitting, or lying in bed?